Okay, so it's Tuesday the 3rd of March, and welcome to our online Q&A drop-in session. My name's Holly Oliver, and I'm going to be answering your questions over the next hour. And just to let everybody know, usually what we would do is we collect questions over the week and answer those. So today we'll be taking questions from people on the call, and also at the end of the session, if we have some time, we'll open the floor up to see if anyone has any additional questions for this week. And as always, any questions that can't be answered during the call, I will follow up with you in an email and also share that with everybody else who's kind of in attendance. So we all get a resolution, which is nice. And also after the session, the call will be uploaded to YouTube. So you can always go back and revise any answers that were yours. All right. Okay, so let's get started. And we're going to start with actually, let me just mention the format. So what I'll do is when it comes to your particular question, if you're here, I'll unmute you and we can have a bit more of a discussion about what answers you're looking for at the moment. So today we are going to start with Ben. And Ben, I'm hoping you can hear me, but I'm going to unmute you now. So let's just do that. Where are you? There we go. Oh, I think you've actually muted yourself, Ben. So if you want to unmute, that would be great. We can give that a go. But I'll also begin with Ben's question. So Ben is currently setting up a holiday planner on his system. And because it's a relatively new system, one of the kind of issues that is coming up is how to backdate holiday. And obviously, if Holiday Planner is set up correctly, managers and substitute managers have the ability to backdate holiday for the people that are in their Holiday Planner group. So I'm just going to jump to Holiday Planner on screen and show you the setup that I mean. So we're going to go first into admin, and then we're going to go into holidays. Then we're going to have a look at our Holiday Planner group configuration. So the way Holiday Planner works in terms of an approval process is that you have your Holiday Planner groups. Within that particular group, you have a manager, and then you can set a substitute manager as well. So I can start typing a user's name in there and add them in there as a substitute manager. So the people who are managers and substitute managers have the ability to book holiday on behalf of other users. I think my screen may have been lost as well. Let's try that. Hopefully it's back now. Cool. Okay, so let's get rid of that as well. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to switch to show my main screen rather than my browser. There we go. Okay. Brilliant. So right, so the Holiday Planner setup is that you have your manager and your substitute manager, and that those people have the ability to approve holidays, but also book holidays on behalf of other users. So typically this is the setup if you have, I don't know, if somebody books a working from home day or a sick day, etc. So one of the problems, as already mentioned, that Ben was coming up against was that they wanted, as a company, to backdate holidays into Holiday Planner itself. And I think we kind of got to a place where we said, well, it is possible for managers and substitute managers to backdate holidays. So, for example, here, you can see I am the manager of the support group here. So let's just save those changes. And then I'm going to go into holiday in the front end. So there's Holiday Planner. And I'm going to go to the Manager tab rather than this area here, which is Request Leave or Absence, because that's for me. So I'm going to go into Manager. And then I have the Create Absence Leave button, which I can click on. I can then choose a particular user who is in one of my Holiday Planner groups. So I think that user is. And then I can then backdate holidays. So let's go all the way back to December 14 and have the 8th to the 12th off. Hit submit. they don't have a quota. Let's try something else. So let's go for something in this year rather than last year. So let's scoot forward again, and let's go from January the 5th to the 8th. Okay, so you'll see days have been requested. That's all successful. If I go to my team, if I select the holiday planner group that user is in, you'll then be able to see that user there. If I select January 2015, that holiday will then come up and be backdated. And it will also pull from any of the quotas that user has for that particular year. So one of the kind of next things, so we got to this point with Ben, and then I think we said, well, it's really difficult to ask all managers to go back in time and put in holidays for every one of their holiday planner groups, because realistically, we could be looking at a situation where you might have, a numerous amount of people in your holiday planner group, and it's a massive task to ask somebody to complete. So one of the kind of points we got to was, would it be easier to create a super manager who managed everyone? Then once the holidays are logged, we can delete this profile and its permissions. So from what I understand of that, would the idea be to have the holiday planner group set up, then have that super manager as the manager for everyone, backdate all of their holiday, and then remove that user? Now, Ben, I don't know if you can hear me, or you are possibly able to come off mute just to double check that's what you're looking for. So we'll give you a couple of seconds to do that. Okay, we seem to have lost Ben, kind of. So let's assume that is what's happening. So the ability to add somebody as a manager, this can obviously change as and when you're ready. So that's perfectly fine. You could set up a temporary user account to do that, and then add that person to individual manager groups, and then remove that user. And I actually had a little test of this before, and once you book holidays in for a particular user and that's requested, if you delete the user who booked those holidays as a manager, especially backdated holiday, those still remain in a person's holiday planner kind of view and are booked holidays. So that will be a perfect way to do that. And I think when people start using Holiday Planner, obviously if you get your system halfway through your holiday year, this sort of thing could come up. And I mean, the good thing to bear in mind is that the ability to change manager and substitute manager is relatively easy. And as I pointed out, once those holidays are booked, they're booked even if that user is deleted. So that's a very good workaround for that situation. So Ben, hopefully that confirms your suspicions and your plan of action. And if you have any other questions of that, please feel free to type something in the GoToMeeting chat or come off mute. Okay. All right, so that's our holiday planner question for today. The next question comes from Adam, and it is, we are looking at updating our homepage layout. Where can we find what components are available, and how do we know when new ones are available after an upgrade? So, a bit of context, Adam and his team actually manage their homepage design independently. But also this information is very, very useful if anybody listening manages their own publish page templates and kind of wants to know a little bit more about how that works. So first of all, the components that are publicly available are put on our GitLab area. GitHub area rather than GitLab. I always get those two confused. So we have a Claromentis GitHub, which is github.com/Claromentis. And in here, you get a list of all of the components that we use as a part of our homepage design, but also are available to you to add. And we've got kind of, the traditional ones like homepage slider, employee of the month, and then the more seasonal ones like falling snowflakes on your intranet, which is a very popular one. And other bits and pieces like the anniversary component, who's out, etc. So with the GitHub area, when we make changes to the components, that information is shared here. And you'll see there's quite a few there that are publicly available. So, I mean, my recommendation in terms of when they are and aren't updated, the best thing to do is to follow or find the repository and keep an eye on it here in Claromentis in the GitHub. We don't announce component updates, but you can see that these ones are updated fairly regularly. So we've got 6 days ago, 18 days ago, etc. So that's where you can find all of our components. And like I mentioned, even if you don't do a lot of design from your side or with your system, you can also include quite a few of these in your publish page templates. And there's some good ones in there as well. All right. Okay, so the second question that we had from Adam is about forums. So the question is, in forums, is it possible to have topics auto-delete after a specific period of time? And this is a great question because Forum is one of our slightly older applications, but one that is actually used quite often. So I can also see where this question is born from. So let's start from the admin panel of the Forum application itself. So we're going to go to admin and we're going to go to Forum. So when you're setting up a forum, you first of all add a new board, and then to that board you add a category, and then people from your front end, so your front end users, come in and post topics within that board or category rather. So unfortunately there's no way to have topics auto delete or expire after a certain period of time, but there is a way to make certain boards and or categories expire after a certain time. So I'm just going to kind of show you where that feature and option is. So when we set up a new board, we're in the forum admin panel here. We click add a new board and then we can fill out all of this information here. So we might have something like, let's have a technical board. Ask all your tech questions here. And then you can do things like select the position of a board, so where it appears in forum for your front end users. And there are a few advanced options as well. And the advanced options is where we want to look at for, or where we want to go for setting an expiration date on a particular board and or topic. So first of all, you have the code name box. Now this field here, you can see at the bottom, we have a very handy little note that says leave blank for a standard form. If you have a code name attached to your forum, that means people with the link are the only people who can access that particular area. So that's one to bear in mind there. And then just under that, we have expiration date. So you can see you can choose expires after and choose minutes, days, hours, weeks or months. And we've also got changeable as well, so with default, etc. So you can go back in afterwards and change that. So let's say you wanted a particular board to have no expiration date, but maybe you want the categories underneath it that people are posting topics to expire. We can also do that as well, and we'll have a look at it in a moment. Now you'll see that underneath expiration, we have set this for all categories in this board. So as well as having individual category expiration dates, we can also have it set up on the board and have that filter down through all of those categories. So for now, I'm going to set my board as no expiration date and just set something very basic up. So let's add all users. Let's add our good old intranet administrators in there and allow them to post, reply, and moderate, and also all registered to post and reply. Okay, so we're going to hit submit. And there's our board. And then under our board, using this green plus icon just over on the left hand side, we're going to add a category. So when we add a category, we might say something like, what could be a good technical question? Networking. It's always a good one. So in here, you can see we've got that same option. So there's our area where we can set an expiration date for this particular category. So we might say this is only live for, a couple of weeks. Fill out all of this information and hit create. And also specify a position. There we go. So now what we have is we have a board that will always remain, and then underneath that we have a category that users can post topics into that will be deleted and will expire after 2 weeks. And it's particularly useful if you're working on projects, or maybe some form of competition or something that has an end date to it, and you want just general discussion about that. So that is the only area where you can apply kind of end date to forum. If we have a look in the front end, so we're going to go to applications and forum here, you'll see there's my board and my category within it. If I click into there, you'll see I can add a new topic. But in here, I don't have an expiration date for this particular topic, but I am told when it will expire because that's when the board will disappear. So you can also pull things through like that. So unfortunately, to your specific question, which is it possible to have topics auto-delete after a specific time period? Individually, unfortunately, no, it's not possible, but you can have a category disappear after a certain amount of time, which will then take all of those topics with it. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. All right. Okay, so the next thing, or the next question we've got is one from Stuart. And Stuart is asking about roles and groups within the system. So their system is almost ready for launch, but they just want a bit of a refresher on how roles and groups work, and also how these interact with the site. Which is a great question and a really important one, especially if you're very new to the system or you're thinking about how you want to build out and set up initially. So, roles and groups. So the very heart of Claromentis is permissions. Most of the content you see is controlled by permissions, and as well as being restrictive in nature, so you can see this because you're here or you're in this role, they can also be quite functional as well. So permissions give you the rights to do lots of extra things around the system and are also crucial to content creation, as well as what content you see. So we're going to talk about roles and groups, how you set them up, and I guess best practices for roles and groups. So let's first of all go to the admin panel and to people. So ideally, and a lot of you will probably already be past this point, but when we always kind of recommend that when you're setting up a system, before your users go in, you think about the role and group structure of the particular setup that you're going to have. And one reason for that is because a solid role and group structure long term gives you less of a headache. The more users, the more you expand, and it's also very scalable as well. So let's say we have a group. Oh, we've lost sound. Oh, it's dropped out of the audio. How did you hear? How long did you hear up to? It literally went back 5 seconds. Okay, cool. Oh no. Okay, sorry about that. We had a little bit of a technical hitch and I lost sound. So hopefully we're back now. Cool. Okay, cool. So just to revert back to what we were talking about. So roles and groups, yeah, so we recommend that those are all set up before your users go into the system. And like I mentioned, the more you expand, the more you grow, the more people change roles or groups or how they interact with the internet. Um, it's really, really important to have that structure as set up as possible. So, what we're going to do then is we're going to talk about roles and groups and how the two interact with the site and permissions, most importantly. So, when we talk about roles, and just a side note, even though we recommend as a best practice that roles and group structure is set up before you kind of start adding users to the system, the other side of that kind of question, or coin, is that that's not always real life. You know, you will start a system, you'll realize that as you go along, you need a lot more people doing different things around the intranet, and maybe you add an extra subgroup or you break up a group in your department or your departments, etc. So even though we recommend that that is sorted beforehand, it's always possible to go back, make changes, and then apply them everywhere you need to as well. So let's talk about roles first of all, and kind of recommended best practices for what they do. So ideally, roles should represent somebody's active content management or creation role within the intranet itself. So we're not necessarily talking about where they sit in everyday life, so what team they're in or how they interact with the intranet from that standpoint. We're talking about what they actively do within the intranet itself. And we also recommend that even if you have one person who performs one task with content within the internet, that you still create a role for them. Because again, long term, if that role changes, if new people come on board to help or support that person, you can simply drop them into the relevant role rather than having to go around all of your content permissions areas and add that person in. So roles are pretty much all about your active content role within the intranet. And you can see we've got a few examples here. So we've got content creators, content managers, we've got our intranet administrators, and then we've got things like news team or dedicated department content managers. And there's an awful lot you can do with roles. And because they are completely customizable, so you can make them work with your cultural naming system, and how you kind of want your team to interact with the intranet. So we recommend that you have roles for obviously your internet administrators. It's also quite nice to have roles set up that cover a dedicated application as well. So you can see here we have news team, where we might have someone who's also the documents content managers, or is responsible for innovate, etc. So you can actually start to break down responsibilities and also give people ownerships of different applications based on their role. And again, not necessarily tied to what team they're in or what department they're in. We also kind of recommend that if you have a system where you have individual users or different departments managing their own content, that you have a role for that. And to break that down even further, you may have a separate role for those who are managing their team's intranet pages and then their team's documents, because quite often there is a kind of gap between the two or a bridge between the two. Other little tips about roles is that people can be in multiple roles on the system. They will just always receive the highest level of permissions given to them for the relevant content. So it is a case that quite often you will find some of your intranet administrators also dabble a little bit in the content manager's role and things like that. And don't be afraid of creating roles. Like I said, even if you have one person who does one thing, still create them a role. It kind of gives you, like I said, that flexibility if things change or you expand. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at setting up a role, and just the kind of processes and information that's available as you do that. So over here on the right hand side, we have the green plus button, which allows you to add a new role to the system. So when we click add a new role, we come to this properties page. So first of all, we can decide the title of a role. So let's go for something like, let's say, marketing team, content managers, something like that. Now, underneath that, we have this extranet area drop down. And if you were on the call last week, or you have heard the session from last week, we covered extranet areas and kind of what they do and what they mean for the system. But essentially, they're areas that you can house third-party users or separate users from the system, and make sure that they can't communicate with each other. So very often used for contractors or third-party users. But if you hop back to last week, there's quite a lot of information on that there. So extranet area as a drop-down box appears when you are creating roles, groups, and even individual users. So it's worth taking the time to kind of know a little bit about what it does. If you know that you are not using extranet areas, which you hopefully will by now, you can simply leave this as none. If you desperately want to choose something in this drop down box, you can select and choose primary area, which is your main intranet area. And usually if you're not using extranet areas, you would just have one area to choose from in that box. You can see there I've got two. And then underneath the extranet area, we've got the description area. Now, this is completely optional. But one of the sort of best practices that I kind of like to recommend, especially when you're working with areas of the intranet that you have some control over in terms of, customizing titles or what an actual object is. Because this is obviously something that is partly down to your cultural naming systems or whatever you've agreed. It's also sometimes down to the individual user. So wherever you see these description boxes or note boxes, or maybe leave a comment for a revision log, it's really good to always, suggest during any training you deliver, or when you're walking people through the system, or even yourself when you're adding content, to leave a description. Even if the title may be painfully obvious to you, it's always really good to point out what a particular something does, so people can just jump in and very easily manage the system if they need to. So in here, we might say something like responsible for marketing documents and publish pages. Oops, there we go. And then underneath underneath the description area, we've got the owner of the role, and that's the person who created it. We've also got create date. And then right at the very bottom, we've got edit skills. So at current, in the 7.3 version of the system, skills are associated to the role somebody is placed into. So when you create a role, once it's submitted, you can add skills to that role, and then anybody who is dropped into that role as an individual can then rate themselves how good a particular skill they are. And this is one of the main differences between roles and groups, and you will see it at the bottom of roles. This is changing slightly in 7.4 when roles become more about the individual user when skills become more about the individual user rather than the role they're in. But for the moment, you will see this at the bottom of your screen. So that is all of the main kind of properties for the role that you're working with. But you may also notice behind Edit Role, we have a Users tab and also an Available Visual Interfaces tab. So we're going to do this in order just to talk about what each of these individual tabs does. So our Users tab allows us to add individuals to this role as we're creating that role. So earlier on, I said best practice, create your role and then add users to the system. And obviously that's, like I said, not always going to be the way it works. Sometimes you will need to just create a role and add a couple of users to it as you go along. And you can do that here. So for example, I can pop myself in there. I can put Hannah in there, and I can put Will into this role. And then as soon as I hit submit, they will automatically get any of the permissions that have been applied to this role. So you can also add people like that. And then the last tab is available visual interfaces. Now, this is a little bit like the extranet area drop down, in that it is always there, but you may or probably don't ever use it. So it's always good to kind of know what these bits and pieces hanging around do. So available visual interfaces allows you to set a default homepage design for different groups of users based on their role, group, extranet, or even as far down as individual users. And typical case uses for this might be you have third-party users on the system who need to see a slightly different homepage than the one your general users do. So you would have a different visual interface set as default for that role, group, or extranet area, etc. Now, if you're not using more than one homepage design, you don't need to worry about this tab, but just be aware that it is always there, again, when you create roles, groups, or individual users. Okay. So let's go back, and you'll see that as we go back through the tabs, it remembers all of the information we've put into that role. And what we're going to do from there is we're going to hit submit. So as soon as we do that, you can see in this list, we've got our role title, the description of our role, the extranet area it's in, and also the amount of users that are in that particular role. Now to edit a role, we can click on the title, or we can click on the small eye icon next to the title itself. And you'll also notice that underneath that is edit skills for this role if you want to apply any skills to the role. But if we click back in, you can see we're taken to the same area. We can add more users to the role if we want to, and also we can edit skills down here. So that's our roles. So again, we're just thinking about people who are active with our content on the system. And also remember that on their own, roles don't do anything. It's when we start creating content and adding them as a permissions object to a permissions picker and giving them the rights that these then start to become active. So, for example, just because you call somebody or create a role called intranet administrators doesn't automatically mean that they will have access to every piece of content on the system. That is something you will have to set up as you go along and start creating content. Okay, so those are our roles. Also, just a side note, which will come up in groups as well, you don't need to create a role for all general users, just like you don't need to create a group for all general users, because you have a special permission setup called all registered for that. So those are our roles. And if anyone has any questions about that, please feel free to type them in the box and I will answer them as and when. Okay, so let's talk about groups. So groups in a lot of respect can be a little bit easier or a little bit tougher to set up because ideally groups should reflect your everyday real life organizational structure. So we're talking about the teams people sit in, people's job levels or job roles within a particular team, etc. And groups can be used in terms of permissions in exactly the same way. But we kind of recommend that you start to think about them in terms of, I want to use the word passive, but that's not great, kind of content viewing permissions based on what department or team you sit in. But they could also be used as functional permissions. So they're a very good kind of support to roles. Whereas roles are focusing on what someone does within the intranet, groups are thinking about what permissions somebody should have because of the team or the department that they're sat in. So for example here, you can see we've got a tree structure that builds out. We have our main departments, and then underneath that we have a breakdown of that department. So we have our main team and then our team leaders. And it pretty much goes like that all the way down this list. So really, ideally what you would do here is you translate your group or organizational structure into the group setup within Claromentis. And there are a couple of things that support you to do this. So unlike roles, groups can have subgroups and subgroups of subgroups. So you can get very, very granular with your permission setup, but also if you have a complex organizational structure, it's quite easy to find a way to translate that into the group setup. The other reason why groups is quite useful, other than permissions, and this comes up in a couple of places as well, but is to help and aid your front end users find the people or find people that they're looking for in the right departments or groups. So as well as being used in permissions, you can also search groups from the people application in the front end. So really it's a good organizational tool as well as for permissions. So let's create a couple of groups and look at how the process differs from roles. So again, over here, we've got the green plus icon, which is add a new group. So we're going to click that and we're going to talk about the options in here. So you can see it looks very, very similar to the edit roles group, to the edit role page, but we have an additional box here, which is parent group, which allows us to set subgroups and parent groups. And we've also lost the edit skills option down the bottom. So quite instantly, you kind of can see a couple of differences between the two things. So let's create a group and a couple of subgroups. So I'm going to think about a department that I haven't used as an example already. Let's go for something like let's go for technical, because we set them up a board. So let's create them a group as well. So we'll call this group technical. That's our department, our team. For this moment, we're not going to set a parent group because we want technical to be the very first group in our structure of subgroups. Then just underneath that, we've got the ever-present extranet area drop-down box, and the same rules apply here. If you're not using extranets, you can leave that as none. If you do want to select something here, choose primary area. And then, of course, underneath that, we have a description. So let's follow that best practice advice and add a description here. So we might say something like all technical. Oops. Okay. Then again, we have owner and create date, and owner is creator. And then you've got the same options behind here in terms of tabs. We've got a user tab, which allows us to add users as we go. So again, put Hannah in there, me as well. And again, we've got available visual interfaces. So again, a bit of a hint that you can also set this at group level if you want to. But we're not using different home pages, so that is set somewhere else. So we don't need to worry about all of that in there. So once that's set up, we click create group, and that group will be added to our group structure here. So you can see there's my group name, there's my description, the extranet area it's in, and then the user count for that particular group. Now let's add another group, and we're going to make this a subgroup of technical. So we might say something like, let's say all staff, or let's say general staff. And then we're going to make the parent group of that. So we're going to flick through our structure here, technical. And again, we don't need to worry about extranet area, but we can choose primary area if we want to. And then in description, let's put a little bit of a description. So you might say non-team leaders, something like that. So something a little bit clear and guiding, and maybe something worded slightly nicer. So if we scroll down to the bottom now, you can see we've got technical, and then we've got a subgroup, which is general staff, and our description. And then we're going to go for one more, and we're going to call this group technical team leaders, and make our parent group technical. And again, go through the motion there. So technical team leads, and create that group. Now, if we scroll down here, you'll see that we've got two different kinds of subgroups here in terms of naming conventions. So first of all, I've got general staff, and then I've got technical team leaders. Now, a kind of little hint or best practice for setting up groups is that when you are creating groups, more specifically when you're creating subgroups, you always include within that group name the department name or the team name that that group is sitting underneath. And the reason for that is the way that the group structure or the permissions pickers currently work is if we have general staff under, let's say, 4 or 5 parent groups, when we type in general staff to try and work out what general staff that kind of group is sitting under or what team that's sitting under, we're just going to see general staff duplicated a few times. So we always want to make sure that when you're naming groups, you include the team name or the department name in that group. Okay. So now we've got our technical group and 2 subgroups in there as well. So that's setting up a parent group and subgroups. And what we're going to do now is we're going to talk about how these now how these interact with the actual system and setting up permissions itself. And actually, just a note before we jump away from roles and groups, obviously we've talked about adding users to roles as we go along, or clicking back into a group and adding users in the user tab. But just to talk really quickly about other ways to add people to roles and groups. Also, most importantly, for people who have hundreds and hundreds of users, or even actually just a few users, how you can actually do that in bulk. So your options here involve adding a user to a role or group as you're editing that role or group. The second one is to edit an individual user. And then in here you have the role and the group tab. So you can add them to a role here. And then you can also add them to a group here. And they again will automatically be applied any permissions that have been given to that relative role or group. So we'll click update. And you can see that Alan's account is quickly updated and it says the role and the group is in. So obviously that is fine if you're working on an individual to individual user basis, but the reality of the situation isn't always that. And there could be many other circumstances that your users actually get into the system. So you might be using Active Directory, etc. So in addition to these kind of individual steps and manually adding someone to a role in a group, you can also add people to a role or group using a CSV file. And to do that, you go to export users. And if you've ever worked with a CSV file before, this should all make sense. If you haven't and you'd like a bit more support on this, please get in touch and we can work you through that. But just an additional kind of side tip here. If you export users from the system, you can get perfect columns to manage bulk updating from a CSV file. So if you come into this area here, which is export users, we can choose the mandatory fields in a profile. So that's username, first name, surname, and email. We need those to identify users or create new users. Also, in addition, you need password. But here you can see we've got group and role columns. So if we select the columns that we want to update, hit filter, we then get a perfect CSV template for us to edit and bulk update lots of users. And you can see here that you can download to a CSV file, and it includes roles and groups. Now, once you've downloaded that template to bulk update from a CSV, you can obviously pull down the role and group column. And this is very useful because it means that you can move people into roles and groups from a CSV file. So you may have 100 people on a CSV file. You have a roles and groups column, and then make sure that you put the right role and the right group next to their name, and it would automatically bulk update their profiles and move them into the right roles and groups. Now, again, like I said, if you need any support with this or have any questions, if this is something you want to use, get in touch with us, drop me an email, and we can talk a little bit more about the processes behind that. But I always like to flag that bit just in case you're on a system, you've got loads of users, you're thinking about how you're going to get all of these people into roles and groups. Well, that is probably the easiest and least time consuming way to do it. And also why it is quite a good idea to have those roles and groups set up on the system beforehand, so you know exactly where those people are going and can get people into the right subgroups and main groups, etc. Okay, so the last bit we're going to talk about with roles and groups is how these play or work with permissions. So as I've already said, on their own, roles and groups don't really do anything apart from the fact that they are searchable by our front end users. But until we start dropping them into permission pickers, we're kind of not going to see any of the effects or any of the additional rights that are given to people who sit in those roles or groups. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to news. And I quite like using permissions on news channels as an example, because they're the ones that you'll probably set up at the start of your new system launch, but they're also quite simple rights as well. So we're going to go and have a look in there. So we're going to go to news, and really I just want to see a permissions picker. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create a news channel, and we could be doing this for any content. It could be a publish folder, a document folder, it could be an innovate channel, etc. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a news channel for our technical team. So we're going to come in here, news admin panel, click on news channels and templates, and add a channel name in that box there and hit submit. Okay. So we should all ideally be a little bit familiar with how the permission picker works. So everywhere you can set permissions, you will see this area at the top here. And then just below that, you will have the different rights that can be defined in this particular area or about this particular content. And this changes on an application to application basis. You may also find the permission picker on its own without any rights checkboxes underneath it. And that generally means that all you're doing is controlling who has view rights to that particular piece of content. And that's present in homepage slider and also announcements. So let's have a look at how our roles and groups interact with the site. So we know, and we've established, I've gone on about it being permissions, permissions, permissions. So let's talk about how we might use those here. So as a kind of recommended best practice, when you get to a permissions picker, we like to say, always add your intranet administrators in there and give them all of the rights available. Now, obviously, our intranet administrators may not ever post or publish and approve articles for a technical team news channel. But if you have quite a small team who are supporting a large system or lots of users, it can be quite time consuming for them to go back round to all of the areas that you might need support on and add themselves. And for our intranet administrators who are setting up all of these kinds of content channels or folders, it's a really good thing to do, because it means that, again, you don't have to go around to different areas of the system once you've identified a problem and then give yourself permissions to that. You're just always there, you have access to everything. So let's drop them in first, and then let's think about who should view this particular channel. So what I'm going to say in this instance is actually, it's quite an open system. I'm happy if all users on the system can come in and view the technical team news that is posted. So we can see there we're using the all registered permission setup for view. And then what we're going to say is we're going to say all of our technical team on the system can come in, and I'm going to let them create content for their channel, so they can write articles and they can edit articles as well. So let's start typing technical in there. Now, if we kind of don't take away anything today in terms of how groups interact with permissions, this is something to bear in mind. So you can see that I've started typing the word technical in there, and I've got a duplicate of technical. So at the top, I've got technical group plus, and then just underneath my other technical group pluses, I've got group no plus technical. So this is one to look out for, especially if your group setup is very, very granular. You're dealing with particularly confidential or restricted information, because the differences here can be quite substantial. So what's the difference between Group Plus and Group No Plus? So Group Plus will pull in the technical group and all of its subgroups. So to illustrate that, we're going to jump back to the People admin panel, and I'm going to show you that a little bit more visually. So if we select Technical Group Plus, it will pull in the technical parent group and all of its subgroups underneath. So it will include everybody who's in general staff and everybody who is in technical team leaders. If we pull in technical, let's get that back up again. If we pull in technical group No Plus, it will just pull in the technical group itself. So here, rather than Group Plus, which pulls in everything underneath technical, if we technical No Plus, it will just pull in that group and the users that are in there. And I feel like I've said the word technical so much now and looked at it so much that it's not making sense anymore, which is very untechnical of me. But effectively what we're looking at here is this ability to pull in your group structure, so subgroups and parent groups, but also isolate individual groups and use them for permissions. So that's the main difference there. And you can imagine, especially if you have subgroups underneath team leaders, or if you have, directors groups, that this gets more and more kind of important as those groups become more and more kind of separated and granular. So be aware of that difference. And also it could mean that some people don't see the content that they're meant to see. Because quite often what you may find is that the technical group itself, which is your parent group, may not have any users in, because actually all of the users sit in subgroups underneath that parent group. So again, if you miss the Group Plus, you're going to miss out quite a lot of people. Okay, so we have added our Group Plus technical and we've allowed them to view the channel, but also we're going to allow them to add and edit the channel here. And then what we might do is we might also use groups here. Let's go for technical again. And what we're going to say is our technical team leaders can add and edit, but they can also publish and approve content. So this is a great example of how you can use a group in a functional content creator context. Usually these may be associated to roles, but in this kind of approval process, actually our team leaders are the people who need to be approving news, etc. And we could switch that up a little bit. We could remove our team leaders and we could add our content managers. And we could say, right, those people are the only people who can publish and approve news articles. So there we're using in our permission boxes a mix of roles and groups and also special permission setups for all registered. And we can also use special permission setups for extra areas, etc. So that's how they interact with the site. Roles and groups, all about content permissions, be it what you should view, what you should create, and what you should manage. And also bear in mind that on their own, they don't do anything. So you need to start creating content and adding roles, groups, or special permission setups to those permission pickers. And where possible, try your best not to add individual users to those particular user pickers. Because obviously sometimes the case may be there that you need to add an individual user, but unless it's absolutely necessary, try and avoid it as best you can, because long-term management, when you start to do that, gets a little bit tricky. So that's roles and groups. So it's a big one, it's an important one, and if you can try and get it as spot on as possible before you start getting lots of people using the system and before your content's set up, it will really help you. And also, another little tip, you can set up roles and groups on the system without adding live users to them and apply those roles and groups to content as well. So you could have a fully working system with no live users yet, then come to launch date, add all those live users into their right roles and groups, and they will see loads of lovely content right from the start. So hopefully, Stuart, that answers your question. And I think we've got time for one more. So another one from Stuart, which was, if I wish to distribute reports or Excel documents, how would I do that? Um, so I'm not sure, and I don't think we've got Stuart on the line at the moment, but I think we're talking here about documents, effectively. Rather than kind of reporting tools. So how can you distribute documents using the document management system? Well, the document management system itself is a fully comprehensive DMS. So you can basically store everything in it apart from program files, so exe and DMG files. Everything else is available for you to store and for you to share. The thing that may not happen with those particular files, especially if they're a bit complex or, not common file types, is you may not get a document preview generated for them, but you can still essentially add them to the document management system and share them amongst people. So I think it's a good thing to use. Also to remember that you don't always necessarily have to rely on document preview for the DMS, even though it's quite a big part of it. So what I'm going to do is show you how you can, first of all, I think uploading documents we're probably okay with, but really how you can let people know that a particular document is there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to upload a document. So let's go into a file and add a document here. So I'm going to choose one from my local, and this could be any file type. So it could be an Excel file, but in this instance, I'm just going to add a document, a Word document, and click open. So when you're adding documents to the system, at the bottom here, you have this notification area. So this allows you to, first of all, quietly upload your document with no notifications being sent out. Then second of all, you can send a notification out to users who have view permissions to that particular document. And this is one to look out for, because if you have a document folder set up and all registered have permissions to view it, when you upload a document and choose all users with permissions, it will send out a document to a notification, to every single person on the system. And then lastly, you've got select recipients, which allows you to choose who gets the particular document. Now I'm going to choose select recipients because that's the one that gives us an additional option. If we go for all users with permissions, it will just send that out straight away. So let's go for select recipients and click add a document. So it says a document has been saved over in the corner here. Please create your notification. So what we can do here is we can specify a role, group, individual user, everybody on the system to be sent a notification as soon as we upload this document. So let's say I want to send a notification out to my internet administrators. Down here I can customize that notification. So you can see by default it's got I uploaded a file called this, and here's a link to that particular document. But I could also say, make it a little bit more friendly. Hi guys, I've just updated this document. Please have a read. And then I can hit proceed, and all of my internet administrators will be aware that that document is there and for them to view it. So that's distributing and letting people know that documents are there when you upload them. So what do you do about documents that are already on the system? How can you kind of play around with that? So within document preview itself, you'll see over on the left hand side we've got this small triangle here, and another one of my kind of recommended top tips is wherever you see a small triangle, click it, because there's always good additional features in there and stuff you might miss if you kind of don't know it's there. So always click that. But what we have here, as you can see, is an awful lot of additional features that we can kind of use for this document. So first of all, we can set a reminder for ourselves to maybe have a review of the document. We can monitor a document, so we can keep an eye on any changes that are made to it. We can notify ourselves the next time that that document is uploaded only or changed. And then you've got other things. So you've got send by webmail, send by email, and then we can also, again, send a notification of this document once it's there. So let's say you upload a document for everybody to see. A couple of weeks go by, you edit that document, and then you just want to let people know after it's uploaded that it's there or it's there for review. It's exactly the same process. So you can click send a notification, and you get this lovely pop-up, and it is exactly the same content as when you send a notification as you're uploading. So again, let's remove all registered and have a look at this document. And we can also add notes, the description of the document, and the link to the details of the document. I actually think that takes you to document preview as well. So let's hit submit, and then that notification is sent to everybody in the system. So in terms of distributing reports or documents, I would use the document management system. And when you upload documents, either send a notification to everybody who has view rights, or select certain recipients to receive that notification. And then secondary to that, you can always go back into a document afterwards by going to preview and clicking on the small black triangle there, and sending a notification that way. So hopefully that answers your question. Also, a side note to that is if you have things like policy documents and you kind of want to distribute them to a designated distribution group, and have people kind of read and agree to a particular document, we'd recommend you probably use Policy Manager for that. And if we get some time next week, we'll cover the setting up a Policy Manager and answer any questions somebody might have on that. So cool. All right, so we've run 5 minutes over, which isn't bad, and we've kind of got through all the questions that were here today. So as always, I'll send up some follow-up information to you if you've attended today, with some useful guides and information as well. And if there are any questions that come off the back of the session today, or if you think about anything and you have a question tomorrow or the next day, please drop me an email. It's training@claromentis.com. And also, look forward to. I'm just trying to think. We're not going to run a session next Tuesday, but we're going to try and fit one in towards the end of the week. So keep an eye out on Discover for the notifications of that session. Thank you very much for your time again, and patience with our technical hitches. And we'll see you next week. Have a brilliant week. Cheers.